It's a lot, all this stuff ready to be live here with you all. Wait a minute for somebody to show up. Get myself all organized. I see a heart. Somebody's joining me. It's the Nicholas. I get a heart from him. Yay. So welcome to another episode of Conscious Mind Tripping. Tonight is going to be a little interesting. I have some things that I would like to share with you and like to talk about. And some of it's going to be a little personal. So stick around and let's get this party started. First, we start with some announcements. And if you haven't watched it already, we had Dr. Kimberly Bennett on our Mainstream Metaphysics this past Tuesday. And she is amazing. And the information was again spot on. Hi, Audie. Nice to have you joining me here on YouTube. And so the conversation on Tuesday was around what's happening in the world right now, especially health-wise. And Dr. Bennett is quite the expert in that field. So we were discussing, let's just say, the protocols of what's going on right now. We were talking about the fear around it and how to circumvent that and how to be with each other in this moment, because it is such a incredibly challenging time for so many reasons. So we were talking about all of that and offering up some solutions. So Nick and Dr. Kimberly and myself, we just had I thought it was a very good chat. And hi, Brandon. Hi, Christina. Good to have you guys joining me here. I always love it when there's company when I'm here in my office all by myself having these conversations. More announcements. We are having on September, I believe it's like the 4th, sometime around there, we're having our relationship workshop that Nick and I will be doing together. So if you have challenges in any of the relationships in your life, or you want to create better relationships in your life, that's going to be the day where we are going to make it happen. And Nick and we have a good time when we do our workshops together. So we'll be doing that. Also coming up, I believe it's September 3rd, I'm going to be having that book club. So if you haven't picked it up yet, on Audible especially, it's called The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And it's a really, really good book. Very interesting, insightful, a lot of good stuff in there. So I highly recommend doing that. And then for those of you that are interested in doing the kind of healing work that Nick does, he's got his class, his Beginning Sentient Healing 101 coming up in September as well, maybe around the 10th. So look at newmontcenter.net and you will get all of that information. And we've got some other stuff that's in the works that we'll be putting onto the calendar soon as well. And I think that's it for, Nick just put out a good astrological forecast on his Facebook, Nick Newmont, today. That's pretty interesting. All these retrogrades that are going on, all this stuff that's going on. It's like, woo, it's a lot right now. And with that being said, let's get into what the lot is. So today's one of those days I'm kind of stepping out a little bit of my comfort zone. And I want to talk to you about some things that I think are very important. And I think we all have to step out of it's September 13th that Nick has that class starting. So mark your calendars if you're wanting to do that energy work. He's amazing. And it's a 2-year course. All right, Audie, you know what? You get over to Facebook too. I tape on both of these so that I don't have to retape it to go over here to YouTube. But I think it's easier to be on Facebook. And it's Sentient Healing, yes. So I've been working with a lot of clients lately who seem to have very similar things that are going on. And as a therapist, I mean, for those of you that have worked with me as a therapist, you know I'm not your usual kind of therapist. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how I came to be a therapist and why I do what I do. Because as a hypnotherapist, a lot of people expect to come to a hypnotherapist and we're just going to little snap our fingers and help you by just hypnotizing you and changing your life, which is definitely something we can do. And a lot of hypnotherapists do that, but it's not how I operate. And I want to explain tonight why I do what I do and how I got to be doing what it is that I do when people come in here to my office and have their sessions, or if they are having Zoom sessions. So I want to go back to me and what this looks like. So many of you know, when we're working, I show you the theory of mind. And in the theory of mind, I don't know if y'all can see it as well. This is how your mind operates. And I use it with every single client because most of us never learned how our mind works. We didn't get taught a lot of how to use critical thinking in our lives. And I was thinking about it just today. It's like I read a book by Napoleon Hill years ago, and he wrote it back in 1938, 36 or 38. And he, in that book, said that when we are teaching our children, that we had not at that point been teaching them critical mind, how to think critically. We were having them memorize things and taking tests. And I just put 3 kids through school, and I saw a lot of that. And I wasn't a lot of how to use that critical area of your mind and how to reason things out, how to go into logic. And so I started thinking back about how I had been and how I learned. And when I'm showing people the theory of mind and how we take on our programs, how we take on how we learn how to be, one of the stories that I share is that when I was a little girl, my mother, and it wasn't to be malicious, it was her belief systems, she looked at me and she thought I was the dumb one. And I have it in writing where she said, she's cute, but she's not that smart. And she literally had written down the dumb one. And it would be a miracle if this kindergarten teacher was able to ever get any information into my head. So I, being in hypnosis as a little girl, we're all in hypnosis. We're all taking on the belief systems of who we are. So if you think about a little baby, they come in and they're little empty, little beautiful little beings. And then we name them. And when we tell them, oh, you're so cute, you're so smart. And like my mother, she's not that bright. And she's cute, but she's not that smart. So then when I went through a period of not being so cute, it was a real disaster. So I took on this idea of who I was. And I, in being stupid, was never really taught how to think. So who I had been for a majority of my life was somebody who was just looking for information because I felt like I wasn't smart, so I had to be smarter. So I remember, in fact, I talked about this not too long ago. I just recently went through my journals and I wrote in there that I was dating somebody and I would be able to learn some interesting things from him because he was so smart. And I would just look at information all the time because I felt kind of lost and, not capable. So as I'm learning and as I'm growing, I'm in my dysfunction, making quite a bit of a disaster out of my life. So imagine I'm a kid and I have this idea that I'm not smart and not valuable, not worthy. And then I was going through school, there were classes that I took, especially math, where it was just, I just couldn't get it. And it was because there's this program that's running about who I am and how I operate. So fast forwarding, I start getting into my 20s and I become very successful at doing hair because you don't have to be so smart for that. You have to be creative. And I am a creative person. So I was successful to a point with my career, but making unconscious choices, making very, let's just say, destructive choices in some areas and not really thought out kind of plans. Like when I decided to move from Florida to California, and I was making a really good salary in Florida, had my own assistants and making lots of money, to being a assistant at the Vidal Sassoon salon at minimum wage with my same car payment that I had. And it was a bit of a disaster. So I would create these like disastrous moments in my life because I didn't know how to do critical thinking. I just flew by the seat of my pants. So when I had a moment where I got married, it was a very unconscious moment of getting married. It was like, oh yeah, I'll just do it. And it ended up being where my first husband, I didn't realize it because I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't following my intuition. And I ended up marrying a guy who lied to me about everything. And it was, again, another disaster. And I was blessed with my daughter in that experience. And the reason that I finally changed my life and had to literally step back and say, what the heck is going on here, was because I was making a bit of a mess with my daughter. She was wonderful and she's a great person, but in my unconsciousness and making stupid decisions, it wasn't good for her. So I went to a therapist for like a year and I read every book that I could find. And then I started going to Agape and I started learning about spirituality and what that all looks like. And then I met Nick and he was a hypnotherapist. And I was like, I could add that into things. So I went to school, became a hypnotherapist, and still was having a little challenges with my operating system until I started studying the science and understood more of what my mind is, and how it operates, and started using my critical mind and critical thinking. So when my clients come in, almost always, it's that they haven't been shown what their mind is, what it does, how it operates. So there's a lot of what I do as a therapist when I'm showing that critical mind and I'm showing what your brain actually is, what your mind is, and they're able to do things a little bit differently. So when they come in, there is a big part of it where we're having this conversation and I'm understanding like what their lives are. We're talking about their belief systems because with everything that we do, I narrow it down to very basic things. We have our beliefs, and it's our beliefs that we take on from all different areas. And I'm going to get more into that in a minute. And then there's our intention, our attention, and our perception that are the rulers of everything that we do. So remember back when I said that I took on these beliefs about who I am from my mother and from other areas as well. We take on beliefs from a wide range of things, especially in that 0 to 8 program. We take them on from our teachers. We take them on from our siblings, different family members. We take it on all over the place. And kids also take on information by watching cartoons and TV shows, commercials. You know, when we think that they're not paying attention, they could be watching the news with us if we're watching the news. So there's all these avenues for a 0 to 8-year-old to be taking in information. Their minds are basically like sponges. So they're just taking in information and they're in the back seat of the parent's car. So that's what I call the original program of how we have taken on kind of like our identity. And then as we, from 8 to 9 and on, we take in information from a wide range of sources. And one of the things that I'm finding across the board that's important to talk about is how we take on information in our environment around us. And I've been working with many people lately who are having a challenge as we're in this moment. And, you know, a lot of us were thinking, well, this is a really strong moment. And, you know, there's all this information, there's all this misinformation, there's all of what's ever happening in this moment. But I think it goes back further than this moment. And I want to give examples of what this means and why this is so important. So it kind of goes back like into the 50s. And you all know, I do a lot of research. I look at a lot of information. And there in the 50s was an organization that was created. And I'm not going to say the name of it because it might ding this and I don't want to get dinged. But in this organization, they would use I wrote it down and I really want to be very clear on this. I take a lot of notes, just saying. So this organization, and if anybody ever wants to call me and ask me about it, you can, but they would use mind control, hypnotism, esoteric kind of knowledge, Satanism. They would use all different kinds of things. And this was literally an organization where they would use this kind of information to use to manipulate people. It's not made up. It's not what they would say conspiracy. This is literally what they would do. So it's an organization where they would look at how can we manipulate people. Now, Nick and I are hypnotherapists, and this gets back to what I was saying before. I have learned neuro-linguistic programming. I have learned how to read body language. I've learned how to look at handwriting. I mean, when my clients come in, I'm looking at everything about them. I'm listening to what they say, and I'm watching. And when I'm doing it, I'm looking at how can I be of assistance? How can I be their detective and see some of the unconscious beliefs that they're holding so that I can assist them to change their own mind? And that's what I do. And that's why I have a lot of success with my clients, because I have these tools that I'm saying, look, this is what I see. And this is what's the program. Nothing wrong with it, nothing bad about it. There's no judgment on it whatsoever. We all learn what we learn. But I'm coming from a very loving, compassionate, constructive place. And I remember very clearly years ago, it goes back to my first husband. It was like, I didn't know that he was lying to me for the longest time because it's not who I am. It's not how I roll. So it was like, what in the world just happened here? So it wasn't in my wheelhouse. It wasn't that I'm that way, so I saw it. So when we are being influenced by other people, there is this thing called cognitive dissonance. It's like we can't believe that we would be manipulated. We can't believe that somebody would have ill intent towards us. We're all humans. We think how we think. Like I'm one of these people. It's like people come in and I want to help them. And a lot of times I go well out of my way where I do things maybe that aren't even in my best interest to help people out, like taking their call when they're having a bad moment. But it's the right thing for me to do. And it's usually about 2 minutes. So when we're not thinking like that, there's a part of us where we can't believe that somebody would have ill intent. So getting back to this organization that was created in the 50s, there has been a lot of ill intent. And if any of you are close to my age, I'm going to be, how old? I'm going to be 59 in October. And so I've seen a lot since I was born in 1962. And I've been watching the world and I've been watching what's going on. And as an example, my father, who just recently passed away, we were talking about it, how he used to smoke cigarettes. And my mother smoked cigarettes. My mother actually died of cancer. And if you look at when cigarettes first came out, even the doctors were like, yeah, on my break, I'm smoking a Camel or whatever the hell he was smoking. And they said, this is what we do to help us relax. And for the longest time, the cigarette companies knew that that would cause problems in the body. They knew that they were putting addictive chemicals in them. They knew all of that. And it took a lot to finally get those little labels that were put on the cigarette, the little cigarette, packages. And it was still being promoted. We're going to tell you that they cause cancer, but, we're still going to make them. We're still going to sell them. And there's other things that are like cigarettes, but cigarettes are one of those big things. And getting back to my father, I guess he met my stepmother, and she's like, no. And he, God bless him, it was like he stopped doing that. My mother didn't stop. And it was one of those things that you look at and it's like, that's a serious manipulation. That is a serious program that we take on. It's not so bad. It's not going to kill me. And then you're just addicted and you're doing this unconscious thing. And Nick says, yeah, they actually put sugar in the paper with the cigarettes because it adds to the addiction properties. And so I remember, and this gets back to me again, I remember so much in my early years, my teenage years, my young adult years, and making just horrendous choices with drinking. I had a moment where I smoked cigarettes. My daughter made me stop. God bless her. I was going through that divorce and it was a bad moment. And, I did that. And I remember at that time thinking, oh, you know what? My body's young. It's resilient. It's okay. It's all going to be okay that I'm doing this thing. So getting back to now and why this is also important, I remember clearly thinking, oh, you know what? The government wouldn't do whatever, or this is all okay. And people over exaggerate. And now I am in the space here where I'm looking at all this information. And there's a part of it where I'm doing what I've learned to do, this critical thinking. So critical thinking, I want to explain that in a little bit more detail today because it is so important for this moment that we're in right now. Because, before I get to critical thinking, I'm looking at my notes. You know what, Catherine? I will pray for that. I will pray that you overcome. Yes, because it's a very big deal for so many reasons. So getting back to the manipulation, and I work with a fair amount of teenagers, and their brains are still growing. Their prefrontal cortex is growing. And I remember myself clearly when I was a teenager, I was a drinker. And I would go out with my friends after work and just be a disaster. So I grew my brain on drinking. And it was that program that I kind of took on. And it took me years to get to a really good place with that. I was functional, but I'm telling you, at some point they could have thrown me into the rehab easily. It never happened, and I overcame it. But it is an act of God to do that. So when you're looking at these beliefs that we take on and you're looking at how outside influences make that happen, and teenagers, when the teenagers are watching horror movies, they're listening to music that has violence in it and degrading and all the stuff that we already know is in there. When we are looking at commercials or we're watching the news, all of that, you're here, you're watching the TV or whatever the thing is, and you're in hypnosis and you're taking on a message. Like a few years ago, I told, I think it was Nick, I said, it's so strange that there are so many movies out right now that are horror movies and that are violent. And it was a real task to find a movie that was fun and that was in some way inspiring or just light and it made you feel good. And my daughter mentioned it as well. It's like, it's really hard for me to go to the movies right now because everything is so geared towards horror. So when we're a kid and we're watching that, kids are a lot more susceptible, a lot more suggestible. And these kids that I'm working with, it's like they don't even understand why they're feeling so angry. And let me also just mention the gaming. It's like you're here, and when you're playing the games, you're in it. You're in the game and you're literally not present in your human body. You're doing that thing. So when there's a lot of violence, when there's a lot of, whatever the thing is, that becomes normal. That becomes okay. And when you're growing your brain on that, it makes it really hard to change it. So back to me when I was growing my brain on those kind of things that I had going on. And then I had all the influences of, or the experiences of making bad choices and doing the things that I did. I know what that all looks like. So then when my clients come in, I can show them, here's where the critical thinking needs to come in, and here's how you do it. The other part of all of this, before I go in a little bit more to that, is trauma. And a lot of us have experienced trauma over this period of time on a lot of levels. And for me, trauma is anything that is unlike love. So when you're looking at the car analogy and you're looking at what happens when we have trauma, because that places an influence on your mind as well. So, and I want you to really think about this. When we have a trauma, it's like your car analogy. It's like there's a wall and the car hitting the wall is trauma. And when we have too much of it, like we've all had a lot of trauma lately, and the news and all the things that are going on right now, and this lack of what's true and what's not, when we have that much trauma, what a lot of people do is their car gets very uncomfortable to be in. It gets dented. It gets very difficult to keep moving forward in a constructive and kind of positive way. So what people have been having a tendency to do is, I need to get into another car. So another car can look like, I'll just maybe drink a little bit more. Maybe I'll just check out in one way, shape, or form, or maybe I'll work even harder, or I'll do something so I don't have to be present in this car because it's just too uncomfortable. So they kind of say, you know what, I don't even want to see all of this. I don't even want to know what's going on because it's just too uncomfortable. I'm just going to be in the car that's pretending that everything is okay right now. And to be clear, when you're riding two cars, you can't do the critical thinking. It's just not available. So in this moment, getting back to the critical thinking, we all have to really be in that ability to do what's critical thinking. So when we're looking at what critical thinking is, and if anybody has any questions, I'm looking here at the comments because I feel like I'm just talking by myself a lot. But I think this is a really important thing, and it's why I'm going to be very clear. This is not my favorite thing to do. It's like when I wrote my book or I became a practitioner, Spirit guides me, and I have just been led to do what I'm doing right here. So I'm thanking you very much for bearing with me as I rattle on by myself. And if you do have any questions, ask me in the comments because I love questions because it helps me to see where you're at and it helps my flow. So when we're looking at critical thinking, there's a part of it where you have to step back from what's going on around you and get calm within yourself. And you have to step back and really own your power to be present in the one car. And so there's a part of it where you're being present and you're saying, I am safe, I'm okay, and I'm able to look at information and find those things that I can latch onto that will help me move forward without being in fear, without being in anxiety, worry, stress, which have been massive right now. So there's a part of it where you're saying, I want to use that anxiety, that stress, that worry to figure out what is causing this rather than just being lost in it. Because I'm going to say, getting back to that organization that started in the 50s and getting back to just what I know of commercials alone, we're being manipulated all the time to be in fear, to be in two cars, to be divided within ourselves and divided with each other. It's literally happening. So this organization and all these other powers that be, I don't even need to go into who they are or what it is. I say sometimes to my clients that everything is showing you the consciousness of what we have. So when we're having an issue, like say with finances or an issue with our health or with our love life or being happy, everything is revealing the consciousness that we have around it. So as an example, if somebody's having challenges with their love life, what are your thoughts around it? What are you thinking? What are your beliefs around it? Your reality is created by that, by your belief system, by your consciousness. So your consciousness is literally creating a lot of the events of your life. Or if the events of things are happening, your consciousness with regard to it, what you're thinking with regard to it, what you're feeling with regard to it, are the things that are creating your individual story. As an example, when this whole thing started, I chose to look at information. I chose to go to Dr. Bennett. I chose to stay calm with it. I chose to look at all different kinds of news so I could make a conscious, critical decision. And that was a conscious choice that I made. Now, the rest of my family didn't do that. I chose to do it, and I chose to keep bringing my mind back to calm when I would see things that were disturbing. And I get it that a lot of people haven't done that or hadn't been able to do it. But in this moment, it's super important for us all to be able to look at what's going on and look at it from various vantage points instead of thinking, oh, somebody's just going to take care of me. Because that's not kind of what's happening. If we're looking at things objectively, if we're looking at it using the critical mind, looking at it with logic, with reason, with deduction, and not being in fear, there's a part of it where we look at there's a lot that's going on that doesn't match up. There's a lot that is happening that is not exactly accurate. And I'm looking at Catherine's, have I heard about the, yeah, actually, and that can happen. So when these traumas happen, we go into what's called fight, flight, or freeze. And sometimes we get stuck in what's like a habit. Like I've worked with many people who have been in this moment of isolation, and they get into a habit and they get frozen in the moment. And within their isolation, they completely change everything and they get frozen. They don't shower. They don't eat healthy. They just zone out in front of whatever screen that they can find, whether it's the TV, gaming, the phone, social media, whatever that thing is, and they get kind of stuck. So then when we're now opening up again and they need to get out of the house, it's like they're kind of frozen. They're kind of stuck. And that's when they, call me or call Nick or call anybody that can be of help. And it's like there's this part of having to dig back out of that. It's like step by step by step, crawling back out of the hole again. So it's important to recognize if you've had a moment where you've gotten stuck with all of this, or you've gotten into some habits, like maybe you're drinking more than usual, or you're gaming more than usual, or you're doing whatever. There's a part of it where you have the recognition. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. And you're in a choice point. And it's a moment of working through that and taking step by step to unfreeze yourself. I hope that answered that. Yeah, and that severe violence part. Yes, you know what, people can, and that is definitely a challenge. So there's all these things that happen in a lifetime, and there's all these things that we get into trauma about, and it's important to recognize we have the power to change our minds. Our minds are like plastic. They call it plasticity. That's an interesting word to say. So when you are recognizing my car's over here and I'm kind of not in it, how am I going to integrate myself and be safe in it? So there's a part of it of being informed with constructive information. There's a part of it that's being informed with knowing how to move forward, like taking those steps, using different tools, talking to people that matter. And a big one, a very, very big one, is meditating. So I know Nick and I have been like saying that every week we're on these shows, but now is definitely a time to be able to meditate. And when I say meditate, I don't mean that you have to sit there, because a lot of us are very, very busy and we don't have time to like literally like, and just be not moving and silent for a long time. And to be honest, some of us are just movers and meditators, like I am. I'll go in the woods and I walk and meditate, and I get inspired thinking, and I get calm, and I get grounded and centered and focused. That's a great way to meditate. So when you're meditating, it's a part of a tool that helps you to align in your body, to be in one car. Because when you're in one car, you're powerful. When we're divided, we're not. Hi, James. Lovely to have you join us. Hey, Nick is starting a Thursday night meditation in September. Highly recommend that. He's brilliant at teaching meditation, and he will not only help you to quiet your mind, he helps you to channel in your higher self. Interesting to bring that up right now. So when I talk about being in one car, the car is the body, the driver is your soul, in my analogy, and we're either driving consciously, where we're at least calm, comfortable, happy, patient, all the way up to being in love and deep appreciation. So when we're consciously driving, we're hitting our destination. You're knowing this is where I'm going. I own my mind. I'm choosing, I'm being, I'm making it happen. When we're driving unconsciously, like when we're driving consciously, it's that analogy where I say, because we're in California and we're here in Los Angeles, and it's like you're knowing your destinations in San Francisco. So my greatest job, my love of my life, my happiness, all that stuff that we really want to make happen, those goals. So I'm driving from here to San Francisco, and I'm going to pick it up. So I'm driving consciously. Now, when we're driving unconsciously, there's a part where we have gone into worry. Oh my gosh, what if it doesn't happen? So you're getting off of the freeway and you're driving over to somewhere you don't want to be. So the reason why it's important to be in the car with yourself intentionally is you're going to hit your destination. So the other part of it is when you're driving, there is the little you in the back seat. And that's the one that kind of guides you off of the freeway. It's the little backseat driver. I'm worried, I'm anxious, I'm angry, whatever those things are, that you're not hitting your destination. But when Nick is doing meditation, I do it too, but he's got the class coming up. When he does it, what he's doing is he's connecting you to the other driver, and that's the greater part of you. So there's a little bit of who we are here in our human body as far as energy, And there's a lot of who we are that's in the ethers. So when he's teaching that meditation, he's teaching you how to kind of step back and acknowledge that higher self of you that is the greatest driver. They have this vantage point and they can see everything, and they can see, oh, you know what? Here's the road sign up ahead. You keep going this way and you keep going that way, and you're going to get what you want. In fact, we know what you don't even know that you want at this point. So we're going to help guide you. So when you're meditating, being present in the car and trusting, having faith in that higher part of us to lead the way. And it's funny, I was just talking about this with my client earlier today. There's a part of it where yeah, we'll get you integrated, Miss Catherine. I was talking with my client about some of this, and I was explaining to them that higher self part of us, it's people forget, and we think that this is just empty space. But just the mere fact that you're watching me here and listening to what I'm saying, it's not empty space. This is all being on electromagnetic currents, so that we have this like instant timing where I'm able to connect with you. Well, we're very much like the internet. We're receiving information from our higher self. When you bring yourself to a space of calm and you're grounded and you're centered and you're focused. So we're bringing in the internet. So I've had many moments, countless moments, where I have this inspired thought, or literally spirit, whatever you want to call it, divine intelligence. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it God, but it is information, and it is able to come in through us. So we're very much like this internet that we're all on at this moment. We're receiving information and we're giving out information. So when I have my thinking and my feeling lined up, I'm literally programming into that navigational system, like Carmen and I were discussing last week. So the reason that I'm making such a big deal about this critical thinking is because this is a moment where there is so much fear that's going on. I mean, you can look on people's pages and there's a lot of anger, there is a lot of frustration, there's a lot of anxiety. And when we're all experiencing these things, you can get lost in it. You can get lost in the manipulation. You can get lost in all the stuff. I want to say something else. And this might get me in a little bit of trouble. When I said that there's this organization that they literally are into Satanism, they teach that, they study that, they understand that. There is definitely black, let's call it magic out there. Let's call it it's not what we do at all. It's not who I am at all. I don't think like that. I don't be like that. So getting back to what I was saying before, when that is not who we are, it makes it really hard to think that that is how people operate. That's what people do. But over this past year, I have looked at things that are so dark. I have looked at a massive amount of information. And even if a fraction of it is true, there is that fraction. And there is definitely Satanism out there. So why do I bring that up? Because they're in different organizations, people that do that. And I had this insight earlier, I think it was yesterday. When they're doing what they do, there's a part of it, and this has been said many times in many ways, they have to show what they're doing ahead of time. They show you what they're doing. And you can look it up. You can go to different information if you want. You can look at it, or you can just leave it at what I'm about to say. Why they show it to you is because they want you to see it and they want you to experience the fear of it, because they can't create like we do in that blessed way. They rely on our fear to make things happen. So when we're watching a horror movie, a lot of people that are like, oh my God, I would never camp in the woods because, you know what, I've seen a horror movie where things happen out in the woods. Or they're watching movies that have to do with whatever, and they lock and load that fear in their heart, and they're thinking about it, and that creates into this quantum universe. So it's another way of manipulation. And I want you to be very clear. I have seen way too much over this past year and 9 months where I see that I don't buy into it. I share love. I share peace. I share joy. I share the lightness of being. But that doesn't mean that I can't see what's going on. I see it. I get it. It is not my business. And I hold a space for light. I hold a space that these things are getting revealed as they are. I hold a space that the best and highest is happening for humanity. So I'm here present as myself in this car, and I see it. And I've had tears. I've had rage. I've had grief. I've had a lot of experience over this past year and 9 months. And it's been hard sometimes to be present in this car, to be honest. And I have to own my spiritual practice. I have to own my truth. And I have to bring it back to what I can know to be true. Because when I am a being of light and I'm shining, that dispels a lot of darkness. It dispels the darkness from my mind. It dispels a lot of darkness in the world. So it's a majorly important moment right now where we all recognize how powerful we are to see what we can see, to know the truth of whatever it is that we need to know, and not be led by fear, not be led by anxiety, worry, stress. Those things happen and it's okay. We all have those moments. I have them, but I don't live in them. I trust in being able to see clearly how to move beyond that moment. So I have that fear into power tool. My clients use that. They're changing their lives with it. I have the timeline tool. I have all these different things that we're able to use to work through the fear and transform it and be at least at the base of it calm. So this is a moment for all of us where we have to literally trust in something other than the news, because let's just say they don't put out all the information. And some of the things that are happening are not exactly as they appear to be. So that doesn't mean that you need to go in and investigate as much as I do. You don't have to do that at all. But you do have to recognize that not all the information that you're looking at is 100% accurate. I'll give you one example. We had Dr. Kimberly on the other night. Now she goes in and looks at a lot of information on all the medical sites. And she tells us this is what's going on. And what I'm seeing in the news is not that there are all these options to keep our bodies healthy. Like nobody talks about homeoprophylaxis. I took it at the beginning of all this. I've taken some boosters. We haven't even had a cold. I haven't been living in fear because I'm trusting in my body's natural immune system to work through whatever the thing is. And I'm trusting in the natural supplements that we take when we're feeling a moment. But they're not telling you that on the news. It's a lot of fear. This is going on. This could happen. If you don't take this, this is what's going to happen. but they're not also sharing the news that I'm watching from the immunologist scientist, from the people that have worked at some of these companies, all these doctors. Even if a quarter of them are accurate, that quarter of information is information that's not being shared on the news. So why are we being censored so much? There's critical thinking on why are things happening? Why is it not being said over here, but it's being said over there? Like my biggest one right now. Hi, Miss Vassar, Cheryl. I love you. I love all of you, to be clear, but Cheryl holds that really special spot in my heart. One of the biggest things that I'm looking at for critical thinking, if this is such a big, big deal, why aren't we shown how to eat properly? Why aren't we taught how to calm ourselves down? Why is this information that so many homeopathic doctors share becoming more, mainstream? So it's not that you have to do something strange. It's that you have to bring your body back to calm. You have to eat more healthy foods. You have to do certain things to keep your immune system boosted up. Why isn't that on the news? If they're so concerned about people dying, why haven't they taken glyphosate out of the market? Why do they still have aspartame in the market? If it's such a big deal that we don't want people to die, why are certain things still allowed? Just a question, like cigarettes, vaping. These things destroy the immune system. Why is it allowed? Just saying. But the biggest one that I'm looking at lately, and this is again for the critical mind thinking, because my mind goes to, if this is such a big problem, if this is such a huge issue that we need to enforce that everybody take this thing that's literally killing people, it's a fact. Other people are having lots of neurological problems, health problems. We know people personally. So if it's such a big deal that we have to do these things against our will and all the other things that are involved with it, why is the southern border open where there are hundreds of thousands of people pouring in that are not getting tested, that are not having that, the shot? Why is it that they're shipping them to different cities in the country? Why aren't they showing that on the news? Critical thinking. What's the deal there? Why is the news not talking about how crowded they are in there? Why is it open for whoever to come in here? People can go from other countries to Mexico to come in here. Why is that allowed? But yet we have to do the things that we're doing, and we have to lock down while we're locking them in here. Now, I don't know, but my critical thinking goes, there's something not right. So I want to look at it and I want to understand it. So I keep digging in and looking at information. And I don't really get an answer to that one just yet, but I'm pretty sure the answer is coming. But for me in my own car, and this is for all of us, if there is something that's going on with all of this that's causing you to feel whatever in your heart is the most important part of you. Your brain's pretty important too, but that heart is talking to the 50 trillion cells that make up your body, and it's also talking to this intelligent quantum universe. So when you're feeling fear, your body is feeling it. It's literally breaking down your immune system. So we're not supposed to live in it. It's supposed to be a warning. It's supposed to be, hey, there's something we need to look at. There's something that we need to deal with, and we need to deal with it. We need to be present as one individual in the car to deal with it. But we also need to be present with each other and not be in division. It's like we were saying on the show on Tuesday on Mainstream Metaphysics, with families. This is a time to be united with each other and to have compassion for each other in our fear of whatever the thing is. So if somebody thinks that they need to get it, that's okay. If somebody thinks that they don't need to get it, it's okay. Inform yourself, understand, and look at what a lot of different doctors are saying if you have concerns about it. You know, be united with each other. Be united in this country. We're all going through a moment right now, and we all need to work together through this moment because it's not us, it's the powers that be that are creating this division. So, like the car, if we're separate, we can't all work together and work through this time with ease and with grace. So, there has to be where we look at each other with compassion. Fear makes us not think clearly. So, when you see somebody doing whatever, they must be in a moment. It's okay. So, I'll have compassion for them and give them a place to come into so that we can be united, so that we can work through this together. If there is something that's causing anger, use some constructive communication. Whatever it is, this is a moment for all of us to be working through together, using our critical thinking, understanding that there is a much bigger picture here, and making it happen in a way that is loving and kind, especially compassionate right now. It's a big, big deal. Hey, I've only got 3 minutes left. Any questions over here? I've been rattling on. It's a lot for me to do these, especially a night like tonight. I like the lighter nights where I have a guest on, like Carmen last week. He was making me laugh a lot. If you didn't watch that show, watch that show. It was fun. We had a good time, and he had his own version of the car analogy, which I liked a lot. So you can find it on my YouTube channel, Conscious Mind Tripping with Audrey Newmont. And if this had any value for you tonight, please share it. I think that the more of us that are speaking out and being brave and, sharing our light, that the more easy we will get through this. And we are getting through this. And to be clear, it's going to be really, really good. There's a lot of good stuff that's already happening. And we're going into a time that's going to be really blessed. But again, we have to be integrated in ourselves. We have to be integrated with each other. You're welcome, Roberta. There's one more thing I wanted to say before this 2 minutes is up. And I forgot what it was at the second. Oh. No, you know what? I'll save that bit for next week. I don't even know who I'm going to have on next week. And if there's anything that you want me to talk about next week, let me know. I know what I'll do. I'll give you some homework. Look up the Federal Reserve Act of 1871. Just do that for fun. The Federal Reserve Act of 1871. Look at who owns the Federal Reserve. Start informing yourself on those kind of things, because when this all started, I had no idea. And now I do. And it's a very interesting time. There's going to be a lot of changes that are really, really good that are going to be happening here pretty soon. I think that pretty soon. Definitely, I'm thinking by the end of the year. So it's going to be a really blessed time as we get through this moment. So love each other, honor each other, have compassion for each other, and communicate constructively. Constructively means go to my Tools for Transformation with Audrey Newmont, and you'll look in the pictures there, and there's one of the format for constructive communication. Cheryl, you don't have your crown. Just look up who owns the Federal Reserve, but don't look it up on Google. Look it up on like DuckDuckGo, duckduckgo.com. Look up everything there. And look up the Federal Reserve 1871 and just see what it says. See who owns the Federal Reserve and who owns the central bank and that kind of stuff. It's fascinating. And it'll get you thinking, so you can use that critical mind. Okay? So I'd love to see you on Tuesday with Mainstream Metaphysics, and I'd love to see you back here next week. I think I will have a lighter, more fun show on. And if there's any of the topics that we talk about that you would like to see, let me know. And in the meantime, get your butt out and meditate. Go do any kind of meditation. You can meditate while you're doing your housework. Bring your body back to calm. Know that you are divinely protected. Know that divine right action's happening for yourself and for all of humanity. Be the sun. Shine brightly. I love you. Good night.